Hey, welcome to Downloaded. This is the show where we gather all the most opinionated voices in the tech field. Today, focus that energy on the stories impacting the tech world. I am your host, Jim Louderback. Really great lineup today. I'm super excited for the first time to have Ian Sherr here, who writes about Apple, video games, consumer electronics, a lot more for the Wall Street Journal. Ian, thanks for showing up.
My pleasure.
Ian has bags under his eyes because he's been at E3. Actually, you look fine for someone who's at E3 all week.
I got a little bit of rest.
We'll be talking a little bit about E3 as it goes along, a lot of other stuff too. And super excited to have back Justin Severson, who's a tech fan, geek, knows a lot about technology, designer, et cetera, from Palette TV. So thanks for coming back, Justin. And I started on E3, so let's jump right into E3, going on all week. I was looking at this story from actually Rev3 Games. Some of our folks have been down there covering the crap out of the show. Go to Rev3 Games if you want to see more about that. Adam Sessler did a story about how walked out of, went to the Xbox press conference, walked out of the PS4 press conference. I found this surprising, says the PS4 is winning. Ian, you went to both press conferences, right?
Yes.
What do you think about the two of them? Compare and contrast them for me from your point of view.
Definitely the sense among a lot of the gamers there was that that Microsoft really didn't hit the right notes.
Right.
What happened was basically last week they put out this kind of note about the policies about how they're going to handle used game discs. Mm-hmm. You can get a game over on a disc or you can download it. And so what they basically did is they said, okay, if you want to be able to resell it or trade it to a friend or just even lend it, there are new rules that publishers can use. So
kind of complex rules,
it's very
right?
complex.
I mean, I was confused just hearing about it.
Well, and so the thing is that the politics of it really turned out poorly. And then during the press conference, they said that the device would be $499, which is pretty high by some people's standards. Mm-hmm. And then, so we fast forward through the day, we see Ubisoft, we see EA, and then we get to the Sony press conference, and Sony says, oh, all those policies, we're not doing any of it, we're not changing anything from last time. You can resell used, whatever, we don't care. And then the other thing they said was it would be $100 cheaper. Yep. And so that really made a difference to a lot of people. There was a lot of yelling and happiness in the room, and it was rather enthusiastic.
So Justin, what do you think? Pretty smart for Sony to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Microsoft had an uphill battle already. They had their previous press announcement where they went into detail about their complex rules, about used games. Sony, all they had to do was come out and say, yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah, right.
And
we're in the gamers camp here.
Yeah,
hello.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They did a really funny video, which was how to share used games on PS4, which was two executives handing a game to each other.
That's funny.
Which was pretty clear that they knew what they were doing. And then they said, oh yeah, by the way, it's also less expensive.
So what about price? So I have to say that, so I went out and I pre-ordered the Xbox One as soon as it came out. I put my $100 down at the local GameStop. And then I listened to Adam talk about it, and I read all the other press. And I'm like, should I have a little buyer's remorse now? That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I was caught up in the fervor.
Yeah, it's a lot. I did the same thing after they...
Okay, I don't feel so bad.
Well, although I pre-ordered it on Amazon, so I didn't have to put any money down.
Yeah.
But, when they showed off a few games that I really liked, Titanfall looks amazing. And I thought, wow, all this great technology, this game looks great.
Metal Gear Solid looked really good, didn't it?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And then Sony had their conference, and it turns out a lot of the games that Microsoft showed, not all of them, some of them are exclusive, but a lot of them are also coming out
on the PS4.
On the PS4, Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Metal Gear. It's $100 less, more people are gonna have it. I bought an Xbox because everyone else had an Xbox. That's why I got it to play.
Well, we're an Xbox household, so I bought one as well. How about you? Are you a game console owner? Did you put money down on one of them?
I happen to have all of them in my
I'm sure you do since you've covered
it. Yeah, it's part of my job.
Did you put money down? Did you put your own filthy lucre on anything this week?
No, I haven't made that kind of decision yet. But it's interesting. I mean, it's really kind of the sense that I got from a lot of people, and I try to talk to as many gamers as I can in all sorts of age ranges, because I don't know everything, and primarily I'm only able to play like 4 or 5 games a year at most. And so the one thing I learned was that a lot of the people who buy AAA titles, right? They're not what I would consider hardcore gamers, where they buy the indie games and they like the exclusives and this stuff actually matters to them. These are the people who just want to play the hot game that's going on right now. Those people almost universally said, I'm going with Sony. Because the $100 difference and the politics of it, even if they don't trade in used games, the politics of it looks so bad that they just decided to move their money there. And it's really interesting because before E3, I was checking in with a lot of them, and some of them were saying, I really like the TV stuff that Microsoft's doing. I wish it was, a little more advanced, but it's really cool. I really like the idea of being able to bark at my thing, watch HBO, and it just goes there. But when it came to, the rubber hits the road, and all of these things were said, Sony really made a difference.
Do you think? I mean, you can give me your whatever you think, but I Justin, let me know as well. Do you guys think Microsoft's going to back off on this whole used game thing? I mean, what do you think, Justin?
It's tough to say because it feels like they've put together a lot of infrastructure in order to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
I mentioned before that this seems like Microsoft really wants digital distribution to be the primary model, and that the disk-based installation is just a way to get people who want to buy physical media into that space, whereas Sony is going purely with, discs are discs and digital distribution is its own thing. With the amount of work that they've done, the consoles launching this year, they would have to do a lot to backtrack. I don't know that they have the opportunity.
Yeah, Ian, in your talks with the Microsoft folks or other people, get any sense that they have any wiggle room at all?
Well, they certainly have wiggle room. You can always do anything, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
We've got a few months before it comes out, right? But the thing is that the thing that Microsoft's vision is not just about making life harder for you to trade used games, right? What they're really trying to do is, in many ways, if you read some of the interviews they've done since then, they really talk about the guaranteeing specific type of technologies to the developers. So for example, they have this kind of hybrid cloud gaming thing they were doing, where Sony, for example, they're doing cloud gaming where they basically say, okay, we'll stream the bits to your screen just like Netflix does, and then your control, it's like on live, right? Gaikai, which they bought. Microsoft tried to go in a different direction where they can actually layer cloud gaming on top of normal. So, for example, if I'm in a battle scene and there's like this huge sweeping landscape in the background and it's very detailed, and there are like hundreds of people there, the cloud can take care of that, and the machine can focus on just the person, my character and the couple that I'm interacting with, right? So that allows for higher quality graphics because it's not working on the background and all that.
And deeper experiences too, right? Yeah.
But to do that, they need to guarantee to developers, hey, I'm online all the time. I've got the access to this information. And so part of this, I think, is trying to tell developers, here's the technology you can be guaranteed you will always have. And you don't have to slap a sticker on the box saying requires to be online, or you don't have to slap a sticker on the box of some of the games from the last generation where it says requires connect, right? Now, it's there every time. And, is that the right decision? We'll see. But that's, I think, what Microsoft's vision
build that
is.
base into the platform, then you can build up from
Guarantee the technology.
And see what happens. So what do you think about the games? I mean, you looked at the games and saw them. I thought both of them looked really interesting. Do either of you think, in talking with the folks who were there and the folks that think either one won on the title war? Like, who came out with the best list of titles? Justin, what do you think?
I'm going to be a voice of dissent and actually say I think Nintendo for the titles. The thing about both Microsoft and Sony is that you saw a lot of brown-haired white guys and guns, and that seems to be a lot of what AAA titles are nowadays, whereas Nintendo actually had a lot of really fun, really interesting titles that are for kids, for adults, for everybody. Titanfall looks great. I like robots, that's cool. It's still a shooter. I pretty much know what that experience is going to be like. Nintendo has a lot of fun stuff coming out that I'm honestly more excited about those games than anything I saw out of Sony or Microsoft.
Yeah, let's talk about Nintendo for a minute. And at the same time that I bought, that I put my $100 down, they had this, so I had to buy this as well. So it's the 3DS, which I didn't have one, a new one. It's the Animal Planet custom version. Isn't that cool? I actually bought it for my sons, and so I could play Paper Mario. But I agree. I mean, I thought Nintendo had some interesting things, although I was disappointed that there was no new Zelda franchise, that they were just doing an HD version of Wind Waker, which I'm like, come on. What do you think about Nintendo? What do you think they didn't have a press conference. They had a
press conference of sorts.
Of sorts, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about the Nintendo from your perspective.
Basically, they're on the back footing, right? They're really they've been struggling. The Wii U isn't selling as well as they'd hoped. The 3DS is starting to pick up. And they believe the answer is we need to have better games, right? Yep. And we've seen it time and again, software drives hardware.
Yep.
So, and Nintendo really, they're saying the right things. So you've got them coming out with a new Mario game, you've got a new Mario Kart, you've got they're just going after everything, and they're throwing as
Super
much
Smash Brothers,
as they can at the wall.
Brothers.
Yeah, and certainly it's the right things to do at this point from a lot of people's perspective. And especially, I talked to so many developers developers who were saying, you know what, we don't really have any plans for Wii U right now. And that's really bad the second year in, right? That says a lot. And so, you know, the titles definitely, I mean, they're crowd pleasers, right? And it really looks like, I mean, Super Mario 3D Land, which was on the 3DS over there, that did very well. That drove a lot of hardware for them. So doing the world version for, you know, and the translucent tubes, you now get to finally see what happens when they go and into the tubes. That's very smart. It's a really
Mario
good idea.
Gets a cat suit and he gets to scratch
Yeah, well,
things.
and which is perfect for the internet,
it's so
right?
cute. Yeah, I know. We love our funny cat videos.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts, Justin, from Nintendo's perspective? Like, do you own a Wii U?
I don't yet, but
Are you gonna buy one?
after E3, I'm definitely going to buy one. I mean, Mega Man in Smash Brothers is enough for me to put money down.
They're putting Animal Crossing in Smash Brothers too. So how does that sound?
I'm a huge Smash Brothers fan, so new Smash Brothers is the way for me.
Okay, I'm going to go back to I already said this, but I'm going to say it again because I am disappointed that there is no new Zelda franchise. And if you're going to do an HD version of any game, Wind Waker, really?
Wind Waker gets a bad rap because it doesn't look like Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess, but Wind Waker is a great game. And I think that updating it for HD on the Wii U is going to give people a chance to maybe go back and experience it, and because maybe they passed it up the first time because it was too cartoony.
And the way that it was developed probably makes it easier to redo in HD, right? Because it has that cartoony look. The thing that I like best about the HD version of Wind Waker, new sails so that I can sail more quickly between islands, because let's face it, unless you like sailing simulators, that got a little bit of a drag after time 2 or 3. Let's go back to talk about the Xbox One versus the PS4 for a minute. Extreme Tech did a nice little picture where they superimposed the physical design of each one. Those are one boring looks. I mean, this is like 2001 all over again, the monoliths. Ian, what do you think of these designs? I mean, either one of them making you be like, wow, that's going to look great in my living room.
Well, actually, that's part of the point, is that they don't want to, in some ways, look at me, I'm the Xbox, and look at me, I'm the PlayStation. I mean, there's a lot of design that went into them. And when we went up to, there was a bunch of journalists who went up to Redmond when they announced it, and they actually spent the whole day and literally walked us around all of their design labs, well, not all of them, but some of them, and gave us a real sense of how much work went into this.
Yeah.
And they didn't just throw a bunch of stuff in a box, color it, and send it out, right? So the thing is that they're trying to really, I think they're trying to really say, look, we're part of the living room, right? We're going to be able to sit next to your DVD player or, you know, your amp or whatever, and it's not going to be like just really a monolithic thing. You know, even though you say they look like monoliths, they're actually, the whole point, I think, is to make them not stand out.
So you spend 3 years of your work life, and this is what you end up with? Take a look at this picture. This is what you end up with in 3 years of your work life? Wow. I would feel somewhat unsatisfied. But okay, fine. Justin, rate the designs for me.
I love the designs.
Okay, cool.
So,
I'm happy to be in the minority here. So you think they're cool, right?
I think they look cool. They have a great sort of modern feel to them, whereas the Wii and Wii U are very generic. They don't look much like anything. These are very simple, but I don't think they look generic. They do look very similar because I think the designers approach them from very similar goals, but I think they turned out looking pretty good, and I would be happy to make them a centerpiece of my entertainment center.
Either of you had a chance to listen to them? Are they loud?
So I didn't actually get to stand next to a PlayStation 4. The Xboxes that I believe were turned on when I was nearby didn't, because you never know. I mean, it's encased in plastic.
The light was on.
You have no idea, right? So I mean, there could be many things going on, but it didn't seem loud to me.
So last thing on the Xbox One and the PS4, it was interesting. Some of the services, the streaming game services, Twitch announced a service that they're going to allow you to stream right from the Xbox One. It's kind of built into the PS4. What do you guys think about this whole game streaming thing? Is this going to be a really big part of this generation? And Justin, we'll start with you.
You already see a lot of that with PC gaming. You know, Major League Gaming does a lot of streaming. Twitch does it already on PC. I think it's just a natural evolution for that to come to consoles.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think that the big thing is that we're looking at a market that's not growing that much. Okay, if you take PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, they said, you know, if we take 2007, after the first, you know, that the Xbox 360, the Wii, and the PlayStation 3 came out, the market was growing like 27-28% for the console games. This time around, 2014, 2015, we're looking at 4 or 5% growth. Okay, it's not like it's dying, but it's not growing that much.
It's a mature market.
Right, it's a mature market. And so what does that mean? That means that they need to start going after each other's market share. And the thing is that the market share and the people who are going to really care, especially when we're talking about launch, are going to be the hardcore gamers. Hardcore gamers like Twitch. And so it's just it's a natural decision. Yeah. Will my grandmother be using it? Probably not. But you know that's the thing, is that they're trying to be everything for everyone, more so now than ever before.
All right, so the next thing I want to talk about, which I think is pretty interesting, is Ouya. And I don't know, so Ouya went down there. These are the guys that have the new Android-based game box, and they did not want to be part of E3. They didn't want to pay for it. They're having a fight with ERS and with the guys who put the show on, which I can understand. And so they set up across the street in the parking lot. They set up their own little place to talk about their game console. Looks like the cops went down to make sure everything was working after the ERSA sicked them on them. They put a couple of 18-wheel trailers in front of their space. It's a little, I mean, did you see this first of all?
Well, no, I went to the Ouya booth the day before, so I missed it all. But you know, look, there's a lot of politics that go into these types of events. And when I remember last year when THQ was falling apart, you know, Gree took over their booth, and there was a lot of hand-wringing about it. And you know, at the end of the day, look, Ouya wants to have a presence there. They don't have the money, or they don't want to spend the money to be on the show floor. There were a lot of people who were not on the show floor. I went to many meetings that were outside of the convention center and the Staples area. And you know what? That's just normal.
Well, this happens at CES all the time.
It does,
people are always in the hotels
time.
around it. I mean, we at Tech TV one time, we went down to cover the show. We couldn't cover it. We couldn't get on the show floor for some reason. I don't know why. I think because G4 owned it or some stupid thing like that. So we basically put a trailer in the parking lot and had a barbecue and invited everyone over. It was probably the best show coverage I've ever had the pleasure of being part of.
It's the barbecue.
So the barbecue was the barbecue and the beer. Yeah, it was probably that. But do you think, is this really heavy-handed? Justin, what's your take on all this sort of rah, 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 you can't be here, blah, blah?
I think it's fantastic that they set up shop in front of E3. I think that if that ESR had just let them do their thing, we wouldn't be talking about them, but they sort of gave them the coverage that they were looking for, which I think is pretty funny. You know, if that's what you need to do to get a presence, then do it.
Yeah, I think that I think Ouya actually got a lot out of it. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty interesting. All right, well, you know, E3 was going on down in LA. There was another event going on here in San Francisco, which is where we are right now. Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. So the big story out of that, the new iOS 7 design, very different from past iOS, as you can see here as I scroll through Gizmodo's story. Very flat design of the screen. Really, it's a huge, huge, huge change. Justin, do you like it or hate it?
I like it a lot. I think that calling it flat does it a little bit of a disservice. I played around with the beta, and it actually is very layered, whereas the graphics are very simple, simple gradients, solid colors. There's a lot of stuff going on with layering and parallax, so when you actually use it, it's far deeper than the word flat.
Right. Yeah. Ian, what was your take on the iOS 7 rollout?
Well, I think the big thing was that there's a lot of concern about how is Apple going to kind of turn the volume to 11 or whatever analogy you want to use. And iOS, while it's certainly able to do the job, I think there's a lot of sense. You know, you've got Microsoft really starting to push forward with their OS, and at least in the third world countries and emerging markets and everything, they're doing pretty well. And then you've got Android just kind of coming up more and more. And so they really needed to do something. And it seems as though at the very least they've gotten a lot of attention for it. And that's worth its weight in gold right there.
Yeah, my favorite feature, and I'm looking forward to this rolling out, is multitasking, which is something that should have been there a long time ago. I've been using both a Nexus tablet, the 7-inch, and I've been using the iPad Mini. And I really like the iPad Mini, and that's tough for somebody who's not really a big Apple fan to say. But I hate starting something up and then being like, having to wait for it to finish, because like, I can't change to something else. And so that's one of my biggest frustrations. So to me, that's the biggest thing. Justin, what did you think the biggest thing in iOS 7 that you're like, oh my gosh, finally, or I think that's great?
There are a lot of things that I could say, but personally, my favorite thing is the brightness control, that you can just swipe up from the bottom and change your brightness.
That's great.
It is unacceptable that it's taken them this long to do it, because you can do it on the iPad, but you can't do it on the iPhone. You've got to go into settings, change your, and it's awful.
Right.
The fact that I can do that just from any screen, they could have done just that, and I would have been happy.
Ian, are you an iOS user?
I do use it, yes.
And so, personally, are you going to be? I know but just think about your day-to-day use.
Is this going to be better for you?
That's
for sure. It's going to be a different look, but over time that'll get normal. Actually, the thing that really was interesting to me, and it kind of layers in with E3, I just published about this, was the controller, right? They're actually going to have a system, an SDK for a controller now, which Android's had for a long time. But there's a lot of game makers who have over time told me, look, we're not going to look at the iPhone because it's got a touch screen, it doesn't work for shooting games, it doesn't work for sports games that well. There's a lot of stuff that has been hindered by the fact that they don't have physical buttons. And by having software tools to allow you to build a controller either around the iPhone or a separate controller that you can just sit there in your iPads right there and go. That's, I think, going to be pretty big for them.
So what do we think about the gaming on these devices versus something like this? I mean, I haven't used one of these in probably a couple years. I actually think this is a pretty good experience. I like this versus my phone, and just seems like, I don't know. I still think these are on the way out, but I think I'm more inclined towards that now than I was 24 hours ago.
It depends, but part of what I think you want to think about is where's the growth in the market, right? And again, looking at the PwC numbers, the mobile market's where a lot of the growth is. Now, it's not going to be as large by 2017 or whatever their numbers say is the console game market, but it's not to be underestimated that this is an important market. And the game makers, I spoke with Mr. Miyamoto over in Nintendo, the guy who invented Mario and everything, right?
It's my personal god,
right,
yes.
and I asked him, what smartphone do you own? Right?
Oh yeah, what did he say?
BlackBerry,
yeah.
because he prefers the buttons.
He likes the buttons.
He really thinks that
That's
having
a great question.
It's a great answer, right? So and he's got a well-reasoned answer for this, right? He feels like there's an emotional connection through those buttons and to have a tactile experience, right? So it's very interesting that a lot of game makers, they have similar feelings. If you really talk to them, they might make games for iOS, but they're going to say, look, we really feel like these buttons are important.
I need a mechanical response, darn it. So I'm going to go back to design for a minute. Just one last thing on the design of iOS 7 that I thought was kind of interesting. Some of the trends that people are talking about. Patrick Norton, who hosts TechZilla here, was saying, yeah, you know what, Jonathan Ive, he's never had an original idea in his life. That's just Android. And I looked at this story from Tech Radar, which I have up, where one of the reporters there, Phil Lavelle, was talking about how the fact that a lot of the ideas in here were coming from things that had been built for iOS, but you had to jailbreak iOS to get them in there. So is this an example of somebody who is a great thief or somebody who's actually a great designer? Justin, what do you think?
Well, great artists steal. Yeah. Right, and Apple has always done that. They've always taken inspiration from third-party apps, from jailbreak apps, and integrated them into their core operating systems. But the way that they do it is they do it better than anybody else. So yeah, iOS 7 takes a lot from Windows Phone. It takes a lot from Android. It takes a lot from some jailbreaks out there. But the way that it's all integrated together, that's what Apple excels at.
Isn't that how didn't Microsoft get crushed by Apple for doing the exact same thing? I seem to remember that not that long ago, right, Ian?
Well, yeah, there's a lot that happens. But the thing is that I think if you look at the designs, I mean, go back to the original iPhone. I remember when it came out, the first thought I had is, wait, didn't Palm do this?
Yeah, right.
Right, and
right,
so
right.
I mean, a lot of these things, there's a lot of inspiration that goes from it. I agree. At the end of the day, it's what do the users like, right? And how do you push the ball forward? And there's an argument to be made that Apple is definitely putting a lot of effort into pushing the ball forward now versus maybe last year where they were focused more on technical details.
Although one area that I don't think is a good idea, pushing it forward, and this is a big part of iOS 7 on the mobile side as well, is integration with cars. So you're going to be able to sit there and have your car read your text messages to you, and you can dictate them to it. I saw a study this week that that's not really a good idea either. Are they taking this car thing too far, Justin, or are you psyched to get it all integrated and have it all work?
When I saw that, I was stoked.
Yeah?
I mean, no one should be texting in the car.
Oh, agreed, agreed.
If you can talk on the phone with a headset and be engaged in driving and it's not distracting, then having a text message read to you is not that different.
It's not distracting part that I think is interesting because
that's a bigger conversation, right?
Exactly. And so there have been studies. I think there was a study this week. I'm sorry I don't have it to talk about, but I saw it where that even just talking to your phone and doing that is just almost as distracting. So I don't know.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Part of my job every year at CES, I have to write about the car industry too.
Right.
It's just all sorts of stuff.
Well, cars are consumer electronics.
They are, and they're becoming more and more every day.
Absolutely.
And one thing I try to talk to the car companies constantly, and one thing that they always say to me is, look, this stuff's going to happen whether or not we are building the technology for it, right? Go to a teenager, ask any of them, do you use your phone in the car? And give them a consequence-free answer, right?
Yeah, right,
and they're all going to say, yes, of course.
Right.
I mean, even all of us are at one point have looked down, right? And so the reality is that I think Apple is trying to look at this and say, okay, how can we, again, push the ball forward here and say, okay, well, maybe you can't stop them, but maybe what we can do is give them an experience we think is better than what's going on in the cars now. And I'll tell you, I've been in a lot of, especially the luxury cars out there, and the interfaces they design, the way they're built. I even rented a Corolla while I was in Redmond for the Microsoft thing. I practically got in an accident trying to just turn on the audio. And
I just bought a used Audi. It's a 2010, and it's got the MMI or whatever they call that thing in there. And I'm always like, I am definitely more distracted now than I was in my old car. And it's a problem.
Right, and Apple can control, and I'm not saying the car companies can't either, right? But the point is,
they're not good at it.
I'm not going to get into that. But what I am going to say is that, you know, Apple in some ways, you know, I think what they're trying to say is, look, we are known for our minimalist designs, and we can control kind of exactly how much you see on the screen to a point where we feel it's safe. Now, are they the experts on cars? Well, they haven't made a car before, but they are very good at interface design. The car companies are building knowledge around that, but their lives are mostly in buttons, right? So they're learning.
So next thing I want to talk about on the Apple side is the new version of OS X, named after a surf break near my house, which is kind of a departure for them, called Mavericks. I think my favorite tweet on this, I think it was Veronica Belmont who did it, who said they should have called it Sea Lion, which would have been great, which kind of ties into the whole Mavericks wavy thing. But so we've got maps, we've got books, we've got new calendar, we've got Safari updated. Is it really better? Justin, do you want this as well?
Absolutely.
You are a Mac user, I know.
I'm a Mac user.
I throw these to you because I know you're going to be like, oh my God, it's a new OS. It's cool.
I think it was very smart of them to show off OS X Mavericks before iOS 7.
Yeah.
Mavericks seems a bit conservative in comparison, but I think
conservative in what way?
Well, iOS 7 is such a complete redesign, whereas Mavericks still has a lot in common with the current version. And that's sort of been their theme, is that they introduce new concepts, new designs into iOS first, and then slowly bring them to the desktop. I liked the remarks they made about the stitched leather calendar and all those designs, you know, falling by the wayside.
Ran out of green felt.
Yeah, exactly. Which actually speaks to how different this keynote seemed from previous Apple keynotes. It seems like they're finally sort of stepping out of the shadow of Steve Jobs and being much more confident with what they want to do. And you really felt that in all the announcements.
Yeah, so let's compare and contrast that for a minute. So you think this was a great keynote for them?
Absolutely.
What's your sense as you talk to people with it?
There was definitely a lot more energy around it. Yeah. You know, I mean, I think there's always energy around Apple announcements. It's kind of like, you know, is this ridiculous or amazing, right? I mean, how much energy is there? And but I really think that the response I've been reading and a lot of the people out there, there were people talking about iOS at E3, and there was not a single Apple booth there, right? There were a lot of accessories, but Apple doesn't have a presence there. They might be sending people, but they're not. You know, this is a game industry thing. So the fact that they're able to kind of break in and get that kind of attention, that says everything I think you need to know.
So one of the things they also did along with Mavericks, which we're looking forward to seeing, and I don't know if it's going to change a lot of Windows users over to the Mac, but it's certainly going to make a lot of Mac users happy, which is great, is they came out with a couple of new pieces of hardware. So they showed off the new Air, they showed off their new desktop. Take a look at this picture if you can see it. Which is the Mac and which is the trash can? You guys see that over there?
Yeah.
So I thought that was hilarious. It's a really interesting looking design, but then the guys at Kotaku were like, oh, there's a garbage can that looks like the new Mac Pro that you can buy in Japan. Are they missing the mark on the hardware design here? I don't know. Ian, what do you think?
I think that one thing Apple is known for is eye-catching designs. And again, you know, they've gotten attention for it. Will this be like the G4 Cube from many years ago, where there were problems with it. People didn't really buy it that much, and it kind of went by the wayside. We don't know, but I'll tell you, the one thing about the Cube that endured was this idea that you could flip it over, push the button, pull out the whole thing.
Right.
And when they came out with the Mac Pros after that, they were really easy to fix.
To
and
open
really
up,
easy
wasn't
to
that
open
the
up.
best?
That
oh
was,
my God,
that was
I
one
was
of
so
the
jealous.
huge selling points, right?
As somebody who builds his own PCs, I'm like, that's brilliant.
So this time around, they're trying to do a lot with space, right? And they're trying to really shrink it. And whether or not that design endures and whether or not the market takes it, it's definitely going to obviously kind of inform their designs going forward.
Yeah, and you're right about the design. I was in somebody's office this week, I forget who, and they had one of those. Remember the old subwoofer that they came out with years ago that looked like a jellyfish, sort of? It was I was like, wow, it was so distinctive. I'm like, wow, I haven't seen that for a while. That is really cool. This actually kind of reminds me of that. Justin, what do you think about the sort of this design in general and Apple's hardware design overall?
Well, I loved it, as I've loved most of the things that they announced at WWDC. I think it's great. It's some of the first real new industrial design for a computer that we've seen in a long time. And I could not believe how small it was. Yeah. They showed the video, and I was...
For the people who didn't see it, how about like this big? So put your hands up and show me out.
A Mac Pro was what, maybe...
Mac Pro's a big, beefy machine, right?
And it was less than half the size of it.
Yep.
I mean, that's incredible that they packed all of that in into such a compact machine. I think it looks great. Who's to say if it's going to be like the G4 Cube, which I also really liked, surprising no one, I'm sure. But hopefully it endures a little bit longer than the Cube did.
So MacBook Air, they also updated the MacBook Air. I've got a picture of that here. New graphics, new processor, lighter, longer battery life. I just think people love the MacBook Air, and I think they continue to set the portability standards with that. I mean, they do a good job with this, and I think that it seems incremental to me.
The battery life, though.
That's the big thing.
The one thing that's not incremental in this industry is batteries. They have sucked forever.
Yes, exactly.
And we did a really fun front page story about it about a year ago, where we talked to people trying to come up with new technologies to replace the battery. Kinetic stuff. So when I move my shirt around, it collects energy. Right. All these things, because guess what? Batteries suck. And the reality is that they're not getting that much better. So the thing is that Apple is really trying to push forward with at least being able to eke as much as they can out of every little watt. And that, I think, is really what's the front page headline on that device. It's not, I mean, yeah, cool, it's faster, but most computers are fast enough anyway at this point, unless you're like a really crazy user. But the battery life makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I carry this thing. The reason why I still carry this beat up old X220 is because it has removable batteries, and I have this battery, but I got a big honking one.
Right.
And I get 8 to 10 hours on it.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the most important thing, is that portability. And so if it really has that, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to switch, but I might. Last thing they talked about, iTunes Radio. Pandora, Spotify, Rhapsody, all these guys. Do they need to worry about this? Is this fully formed, or is this just something that they're just sort of poking the market? Ian, what do you think of that? Justin, I want to hear your take.
Well, I think that the market is changing over time. Definitely the 99 cents ownership model worked for a long time. But what has changed, in many ways, is that this internet connection we have all the time in our pockets,
always on, yeah,
really has changed the game in some ways. And I mean, make no mistake, iTunes is still the #1 place to buy your music online. But what I think is happening is, we see Spotify and Pandora popping up, and what they're doing is that they're taking advantage of these internet connections to say, hey, you don't have to own it all anymore. You can just click a button and we'll send the bytes to you. And you had iTunes Match, all these things. Apple sees that utilizing this internet connection in our pockets is really a valuable thing now in music. Yeah. And it's doing the same thing in movies too. I mean, look at Netflix and Hulu.
Totally,
right?
totally.
So it makes sense.
Although music is different. So movies you watch once, you may watch it if you're 5, you're going to watch Shrek 12 times.
That's why the download model for movies never really worked that well, right?
But music, there's something I like. I'm going to listen to it every day for at least a week. Justin, your take on iTunes Radio?
I got to play around with it a little bit in the iOS 7 beta, and it's definitely more of a Pandora than it is a Spotify or an Rdio. You can create a playlist or create a station based on genre, based on artist, or just pick one of the pre-made ones. You can't really listen to a whole album the way you can on Spotify or Rdio, which is interesting because Pandora has been struggling a lot with Spotify and Rdio. What I like is that you can actually buy the song right from the interface in iTunes Radio, of course, in the iTunes Store. I am a fan of owning music, like you said. You want to listen to it whenever, wherever you are. I don't really like the idea of media being so transient that the music that we are listening to right now, generations later, aren't going to be able to experience that because it's stored in a server that no longer exists somewhere.
You know, it's funny talking about Pandora. I just got to bring this last story up just because I thought it was really funny and interesting. Pandora bought a radio station in South Dakota. You guys saw this story. You know, trying to stick it to ASCAP and BMI. I just think it's such a clever hack. Do you think it's going to work though, Ian?
Well, it's definitely an interesting decision. You know, it reminds me of when blogs decide to put out a paper.
Yeah, right.
You know? But you know, the thing is that at the end of the day, they're trying to expand their business model. And considering what's been going on recently, you know, look, ideas are ideas. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and well, like the thing that's interesting is they're trying to get around paying high royalties. ASCAP, BMI. What did BMI do? They called their bluff, and they sued them. So I don't know, Justin. This one looks like it's going to have to end up in the courts. But I don't know what's. I want to go to South Dakota and listen to Pandora Radio. I don't know about you, just for fun.
Pandora has an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Like I said, Spotify and RDO are really crowding the market of being able to listen to any music whenever you want to. So they're trying. They're trying as many things as they can think of. I like Pandora. I don't want to see them go away. But I mean, with iTunes Radio, they might not have a place.
All right, I'm going to do a quick lightning round on a couple stories. Just want to say whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. Google buying Waze. Justin, what do you think? Good or bad?
Bad for Apple, good for Google.
Good for Google. Ian?
Smart.
Smart. What about Facebook adding hashtags? Ian?
Finally, I'm going to be able to put all of my Twitter stuff directly into Facebook without having to edit it.
And it'll be searchable. Justin, what do you think about Facebook and the tags?
They're trying really hard to be relevant.
They're trying to, and do you think they're succeeding or not?
No.
All right. Yahoo patenting the ability to reach influential users to pay more via ads. I mean, clout. Does anybody care about this clout stuff, Justin?
It's a smart idea. Whether or not it's successful, who knows? But it's a thing that exists. Clout exists. People use it. It's smart to capitalize on that.
Ian's paying more for social reputation. You think it's going to happen?
I don't know if I would, but I know a lot of people who really care about their clout scores.
Yeah, I know.
Most of them live in San Francisco,
People are obsessed by it. They're obsessed by it. Okay, finally, personal genes. They are not patentable. Good thing or bad thing? Ian?
It's cheaper for me probably in the long run to actually find out if I have a disease. So consumers win.
Justin?
Ridiculous, and it's even a question.
I agree with you. Ridiculous is a question. I'm so glad that my genes are my own. Don't take them away. Don't let Monsanto patent them. So before we wrap up here, I'm really happy to announce our new network, Revision 3's network, Test Tube. So we're exploring science, the nature of things, life, curiosity, awesome content, Jason Silva shots of awe. Go to testtube.com and check it out. Or here on YouTube, you can check it out at Test Tube Network. So check it out there. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you very much. I want to thank Ian Sherr from the Wall Street Journal. I want to thank Justin Severson from Powit TV. Did I say that right? I did, Powit TV. And just want to say, I didn't have my notes in front of me. And I was like, wait a minute, Powit, right. And if you have any questions or anything, you can go down here, comments, suggestions. You want to talk about my lovely new, actually it's my son's 3DS XL. You're happy to. Until next time, you've been watching Downloaded.